You know, all too often, there's particular misconceptions I end up running into time and time again. This time, we're going to be discussing World of Darkness, New World of Darkness specifically. Now, when I initially proposed to someone the idea of playing this game, they initially end up saying, why would I want to play a human being when I could play a werewolf or a mage or a vampire or a specter from beyond or some great monster pulled together from different elements and different flesh? It's really quite simple. Because horror starts at the idea that something is bigger than you are. Not necessarily physically either, just a secret, lack of understanding, keeping people unnerved. And part of that works so well in World of Darkness, particularly if you're treating it more like a campfire story. See, I've run into situations where people want to play Chronicles for ages. But how many games have we run into where the situation has gone from where I'm going to keep running with this campaign, get right into it, and then it burns out? People just can't show up, jobs change, people move, time schedules conflict. There's so many reasons, right? Now, that's not to say that there aren't ways to go about it. But what I ended up finding was when I initially gave this idea, people were under the impression that you couldn't really end up playing horror in that regard, which is completely ludicrous. Miscommunication in this case was the key factor. They were under the impression that the game I wanted to end up running was, you know, all fairy tales and sunshine and rainbows. They don't know me too well, do they? So, let's put our heads on the table and discuss the possibilities. The wonderful thing about playing these one shots, the idea is that you can take a concept and bring it into reality. More, let me back up. Actually, new thought. Let's run with this. Maybe this will get your attention. So many times I have run into this, and you probably run into this yourself. Maybe you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and somebody knows the stat line of an orc. Maybe you'll throw on some fighter levels, barbarian levels. Maybe if you wanted to twist it up, maybe a wizard. Who knows? Okay? That's a little bit confusing, interesting, but confusing. But too often I end up finding into a player who thinks that when I'm talking World of Darkness, it's like, oh, well, what vampire is behind this? Or what's all these claw marks and all this? Oh, we're playing a bit of a werewolf game. No, 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 no. The wonderful thing about World of Darkness is you get to let your imagination run really wild. Because the World of Darkness you present doesn't necessarily have to be the one presented in the canon. World of Darkness, at its core, is just a bunch of rules to help you tell the story you and your players want to tell. I gave the example, and this is always a classic one, but a good one, especially if you play it well. The first step is something's wrong. Just that one element that's out of place. Try and imagine you're living alone in your apartment, maybe. Maybe it's a house you've owned. Let's say you've owned it for 5 years. You're tied to this place. This is your home. And one day, You come to the refrigerator and you realize that a lot of the meat's missing. You could have sworn you picked some up last week. You don't remember. No, you can't possibly have gone through it that quick. But this has been a reoccurring thing for you. You never managed to. You've always been worried about it. Now, what happens when you start walking down that one hallway, past that one closet, and you smell it? That smell of rot. You end up looking in, and what you find is scraps. Scraps of things gnawed to the bone. Why are they in the closet? Why are they in that little nook that's so hard to reach behind the boots and the old shovel for winter and the coats that you're not wearing till the later this spring? Why are some of them fallen? Maybe you've pushed on. Maybe you pushed a little too far. Why? Because all of a sudden you end up pushing at a wall and that wall comes loose. You realize that there's crawl spaces in your walls. You realize that someone has been living in your walls all this time. What happens when you call the police and they don't find anything? They just think that your house is a goddamn maze. It's a really funky house, but it was built like that. Why was it built like that? Oh, okay. You've got a bit of a mystery going on. But then one day, you say open a small cupboard underneath your sink, and you see something black, small, and made of wet, slick hair and eyes looking back at you. That pussy green. That's all you catch as it seems to flicker off into that dark corner of the cabinet. It scares you enough to end up making you fall back as it's kicking out all these pots and pans or cleaning supplies, what have you. You want to get out. Maybe that's enough of an encounter. Maybe you try and chase it. You start finding yourself walking in these corridors. And by the time you walk out, you realize you're not in your home anymore. You're in your neighbor's house. And just behind you are several eyes. Swarm of these things. You run, you hear the scurrying in the walls, you run. What happens then? These are unidentified. These are something that lives with you. And they can get anywhere. Nobody knows where all these little nooks, these crawl spaces are, whose homes have them, whose don't. Look at your walls right now. Wonder, is that really a mouse? Maybe a squirrel in the attic. Yeah, that's gotta be it. Surely it can't be a bunch of carnivorous creatures stealing from you, watching you when you sleep, waiting for you. What are they gonna do once they find out you know that they're there? Something as simple as that ends up turning into quite the story to tell, especially as an experience. Let your imagination fly. I would suggest to anybody pick up one shot and feel free to let your imagination go wild. But the key with World of Darkness, as opposed to, say, Vampire, right? Or Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons, you don't want to tell them everything. You want it to be open to interpretation. Let them wonder. Let them discuss what they think they found. Today, I will be running a one shot session involving two players. This session will take place in small town suburbia. I invite you all to take a gander, listen in, enjoy the experience as we end up going through that little nook into the world of darkness. We'll see you there.